Have you ever noticed that some of the smartest people don't make dramatic exits? They don't post goodbye messages. They don't start arguments. They don't announce that they're cutting people off. One day they're always around, and then, little by little, they seem to vanish. Their replies become shorter, their circle becomes smaller, their life grows quieter. Most people assume they've become arrogant, cold, or antisocial. But what if the opposite is true? What if disappearing isn't about rejecting people at all? What if it's the final stage of seeing the world more clearly than ever before? Because sometimes the greatest transformation in a person's life doesn't happen when they gain more friends, more attention, or more success. It happens when they finally realize what deserves their time and what never did. Stay until the end, because the last psychological shift explains why intelligent people often seem to disappear, just before creating the happiest chapter of their lives. Before we begin, if you enjoy deep psychology, human behavior, and mindset videos that help you understand yourself and others, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It helps us create more content that challenges the way you think. Most people believe intelligence is measured by grades, careers, or the ability to solve difficult problems. But there is another kind of intelligence that quietly changes a person's entire life. It isn't about knowing more facts. It's about seeing more truth. Think back to when you were younger. Conversations felt effortless because you rarely questioned what people meant beneath their words. A compliment sounded genuine. A promise felt reliable. A friendship seemed permanent simply because both people smiled together. The world appeared simple because your mind accepted appearances at face value. Then something changed. Not overnight. Not because one dramatic event shattered your trust. Instead, life slowly handed you experiences that forced you to look beneath the surface. You met people whose words didn't match their actions. You watched someone celebrate your failures more enthusiastically than your successes. You discovered that some relationships survived only while you were useful. At first, these moments seemed isolated. But over time, your brain started connecting them. Human psychology tells us that our minds naturally search for patterns. Every experience becomes another piece of evidence stored inside the subconscious. Eventually, enough pieces fit together that the picture becomes impossible to ignore. Suddenly you notice the friend who always changes the subject when you're excited about a new opportunity. You recognize the coworker who praises you in public but quietly competes with you in private. You realize that some people don't listen to understand. They listen only long enough to talk about themselves. Once these patterns become visible, your social world changes forever. The strange part is that nothing around you has actually changed. The same people still laugh. The same conversations still happen. The same invitations still arrive. But your perception has changed, and perception shapes reality more than most people realize. This is why intelligent people often begin stepping back without even planning to. They aren't trying to punish anyone. They simply stop forcing themselves to participate in relationships that leave them emotionally exhausted. For years they believed being kind meant always saying yes. They thought loyalty required endless patience. They confused availability with love and sacrifice with connection. But maturity teaches a difficult lesson. Not everyone deserves unlimited access to your mind, your time, or your emotional energy. The people who misunderstand this change often take it personally. They ask why you've become distant, why you don't join every gathering anymore, why you no longer respond instantly to every message. They rarely consider that your silence may have nothing to do with them. Sometimes silence is simply the sound of a person protecting the peace they fought for years to find. What makes this transformation so confusing is that it happens quietly. There are no dramatic speeches, no public announcements, just smaller conversations, fewer obligations, and a growing appreciation for calm. Eventually, intelligent people discover something that completely reshapes their priorities. Every relationship has a cost. Some relationships inspire growth. Others quietly drain confidence, attention, and emotional stability. The difference isn't always obvious until you begin paying attention to how you feel after spending time with someone. Do you leave feeling lighter, or heavier? More motivated, or more doubtful? More peaceful, or strangely anxious? Those questions become impossible to ignore, and once someone starts asking them honestly, a second transformation begins. One that has far less to do with other people, and everything to do with the hidden conversation happening inside their own mind. There comes a moment in the life of every deeply self-aware person when they realize the loudest place in the world isn't a crowded room. It's a mind that never gets a chance to rest. For years, they moved through life believing that being surrounded by people meant they were connected. They filled their calendars, answered every message, showed up to every invitation, and convinced themselves that constant interaction was the same as meaningful relationships. But slowly, almost without noticing, something inside them began to resist the noise. At first, it felt strange. They started declining plans they would have accepted without thinking. Long conversations that once seemed entertaining suddenly felt repetitive. Endless small talk became exhausting. Social gatherings that used to energize them now left them mentally drained. It wasn't because they had stopped caring about people. It was because they had started caring about something they had ignored for years, their own inner peace. Psychologists often explain that the human brain has a limited amount of emotional energy available each day. Every interaction, every conversation, every conflict, and every attempt to meet someone else's expectations consumes part of that energy. Most people spend it without realizing it. They say yes when they want to say no. They smile when they're frustrated. They listen to problems they cannot solve. They carry emotional burdens that were never theirs to begin with. Highly intelligent people eventually recognize this invisible cost. They begin noticing that not every relationship feels the same. Some people leave them inspired, calm, and motivated. Others leave them anxious, confused, or emotionally exhausted. This simple observation changes everything because they stop judging relationships by how long they've existed and start judging them by how they affect their mental state. This is where many misunderstand them. Friends may think they're becoming antisocial. Family members may wonder why they're so quiet. Coworkers may assume they've become distant or arrogant. But what others see as withdrawal is often the beginning of emotional wisdom. Imagine carrying a backpack filled with rocks every single day. At first, you don't notice the weight because you've grown used to it. Then one day, someone removes half the rocks. Suddenly you realize how heavy your life had been all along. That's exactly what happens when intelligent people begin letting go of unnecessary emotional obligations. The relief is so powerful that they become unwilling to pick those burdens back up. One of the greatest psychological shifts happens when they stop trying to be understood by everyone. This sounds simple, but it changes an entire life. Most people spend years explaining themselves, defending their choices, and seeking approval from people who have already decided how they want to see them. They waste countless hours trying to correct misunderstandings that were never created by facts but by assumptions, jealousy, or personal insecurity. Eventually, a realization arrives with incredible clarity. Not everyone is listening to understand you. Some people are listening to judge you. Some are listening to compare themselves to you. Some are simply waiting for their turn to speak. Once this truth becomes impossible to ignore, intelligent people stop over-explaining themselves. They stop defending every decision. They become comfortable allowing others to misunderstand them because they realize that peace is far more valuable than winning every argument. This doesn't mean they become emotionally cold. In fact, the opposite often happens. They become more compassionate because they begin understanding that every person's behavior is influenced by experiences nobody else can fully see. The person who constantly criticizes others may secretly fear being judged. The friend who always competes may have spent their entire life believing they were never enough. The person who craves attention might simply be terrified of feeling invisible. Instead of reacting with anger, intelligent people begin observing with curiosity. Observation replaces reaction. Understanding replaces resentment. Distance replaces unnecessary conflict. That distance is rarely about punishment, it is about protection. They protect their attention because they understand that attention shapes reality. Whatever repeatedly captures your focus eventually influences your emotions, your beliefs, and your identity. Spend enough time around negativity, and even an optimistic person begins expecting disappointment. Spend enough time around manipulation, and trust slowly disappears. Spend enough time around constant drama, and peace starts feeling unfamiliar. So they become intentional. Not because they think they're better than anyone else. Because they finally understand that the environment surrounding the mind is just as important as the environment surrounding the body. Just as you wouldn't willingly drink polluted water every day, why would you constantly consume emotional negativity without questioning its effects? This realization creates another unexpected change. Their conversations become deeper. They stop chasing entertainment and begin searching for meaning. Instead of asking, "What's new?" they wonder, "What have you learned?" Instead of trying to impress people, they become fascinated by understanding them. Instead of filling every silence, they begin appreciating it. And that's something very few people understand. Silence isn't awkward for someone who has learned to enjoy their own thoughts. In silence, they process emotions that others try to escape. In silence, they discover beliefs they never realized they held. In silence, they question habits, heal old wounds, and imagine entirely different futures. To outsiders, this quieter life looks lonely. But inside, something remarkable is happening. The person who once depended on external validation is slowly becoming emotionally independent. The opinions that once controlled them lose their power. The fear of missing out is replaced by the joy of missing unnecessary chaos. Approval becomes optional instead of essential. For perhaps the first time in their lives, they stop asking whether other people accept them. They begin asking a far more powerful question. Do I accept the life I'm creating? That single question marks the beginning of a transformation that very few people ever experience fully. Because once a person starts building a life based on inner alignment instead of outside approval, their entire identity begins to change. And that's exactly where the next psychological shift begins. A shift that explains why intelligent people often become impossible to manipulate, impossible to guilt, and almost impossible to distract from the future they're determined to create. There is a quiet turning point that almost nobody notices. It doesn't come with applause, a promotion, or a dramatic life event. It arrives in the middle of an ordinary day, disguised as a simple realization. Intelligent people suddenly understand that the greatest battle they will ever fight isn't against difficult people. It's against the invisible habits that allow difficult people to control their emotions. For years, they believed every criticism deserved a response. Every misunderstanding needed to be corrected. Every conflict had to be solved. They carried the exhausting responsibility of keeping everyone happy, believing that if they just explained themselves a little better, loved people a little harder, or sacrificed a little more, everything would eventually work out. But life has a way of teaching lessons that no book ever could. They begin noticing that some people don't actually want solutions. They want attention. Some don't want peace. They want control. Others don't want honesty because honesty forces them to confront parts of themselves they've spent years avoiding. This changes everything. Instead of asking, "How do I make this person understand me?" they begin asking, "Why do I need this person's understanding in the first place?" That single question is incredibly powerful because it shifts control from the outside world back to the inside. Modern psychology suggests that emotional maturity isn't measured by how strongly you react, it's measured by how intentionally you choose your reactions. Intelligent people slowly realize that every emotional response is an investment. Every argument costs attention. Every grudge consumes mental space. Every attempt to convince someone who refuses to listen steals energy that could have been used to build a better life. Once they understand this, they become extremely selective. Not every opinion deserves an answer. Not every accusation deserves a defense. Not every invitation deserves a yes. At first, this feels uncomfortable because society often rewards constant availability. People expect immediate replies. They expect unlimited access to your time. They expect you to explain your choices, justify your boundaries, and apologize for protecting your peace. But intelligent people discover something surprising. Boundaries don't push healthy people away. They reveal unhealthy relationships. The people who genuinely care about you usually respect your limits. They understand that everyone needs space to think, recover, and grow. The people who become angry are often the ones who benefited most from your lack of boundaries. That realization is painful. Sometimes the people you lose were never connected to who you truly were. They were connected to what you constantly gave them: your attention, your availability, your emotional support, your willingness to solve problems that weren't yours. When those endless gifts begin to disappear, some relationships disappear with them. It hurts. There is no pretending otherwise. Even intelligent people grieve the loss of relationships that no longer serve them. They remember the good moments. They question whether they made the right decision. They wonder if they expected too much or became too distant. But then something remarkable happens. The silence they feared slowly transforms into clarity. Without endless distractions, they begin hearing their own thoughts more clearly than ever before. They rediscover forgotten dreams. Books replace endless scrolling. Learning replaces comparison. Reflection replaces constant reaction. For the first time in years, they stop living on emotional autopilot. This is why solitude becomes so valuable. Many people confuse solitude with loneliness, but psychology draws a clear distinction between the two. Loneliness is the pain of feeling disconnected. Solitude is the freedom of feeling connected to yourself. One weakens the mind, the other strengthens it. Intelligent people eventually stop fearing empty evenings, quiet mornings, and weekends without plans. They stop measuring the quality of life by how busy they appear. Instead, they ask different questions. Did I learn something today? Did I become a little wiser? Did I make decisions that align with the person I'm trying to become? These questions create a completely different life. Growth becomes more important than popularity. Purpose becomes more important than attention. Peace becomes more valuable than approval. Ironically, this often makes them more attractive. Not because they're trying to impress anyone, but because authentic confidence has a quiet power that doesn't demand recognition. They no longer chase conversations. The right conversations naturally find them. They no longer force friendships. Mutual respect creates stronger connections than constant effort ever could. They stop pretending to fit into places that require them to shrink who they are. Instead, they become comfortable walking away from manipulation, walking away from constant negativity, walking away from relationships built entirely on obligation instead of respect. To many observers, this looks like withdrawal, but internally, it's expansion. Every unhealthy connection they release creates room for healthier ones. Every unnecessary obligation creates time for meaningful work. Every moment of silence creates space for deeper understanding. Perhaps the greatest change of all is that intelligent people stop defining themselves through other people's opinions. Compliments no longer inflate their ego. Criticism no longer destroys their confidence. They begin building something much stronger than public approval. They build self-respect. And unlike validation from others, self-respect cannot be taken away by rejection, gossip, or misunderstanding. It grows every time they keep a promise to themselves. Every time they choose discipline over comfort. Every time they protect their peace instead of chasing acceptance. Little by little, they become someone they once admired from a distance. Someone calm under pressure. Someone who doesn't need to prove anything. Someone who can sit alone without feeling empty. Someone whose confidence comes from character instead of applause. That is why intelligent people seem to disappear. They're not hiding from the world. They're rebuilding themselves from the inside out. And once that transformation is complete, they return to life very differently. Not searching for more people, but searching for the right people. Because the final lesson isn't about disappearing from others. It's about finally discovering the version of yourself that was buried beneath years of expectations, noise, and fear. And once you experience that freedom, there is no going back. The final transformation is not that intelligent people become invisible. It is that they stop making themselves available to every distraction that once controlled their lives. For years, many people mistake movement for progress. They believe that a full calendar means a meaningful life. They answer every notification, attend every gathering, and chase every opportunity to be noticed. Yet beneath that constant activity often hides a quiet emptiness. The mind never rests long enough to ask a simple question: is this the life I actually want? Highly self-aware people eventually confront that question. The answer is rarely comfortable. They realize that much of their routine was built around expectations that never truly belonged to them. Some goals were inherited from parents. Some ambitions came from social media. Some friendships survived only because they had existed for years, not because they still brought mutual growth. The hardest part of maturity is recognizing that history alone is not a reason to keep carrying something. This realization changes the way intelligent people approach every area of life. Instead of asking what everyone else expects, they begin asking what aligns with their values. Instead of chasing popularity, they pursue purpose. Instead of collecting acquaintances, they cultivate trust. Instead of speaking to fill silence, they learn to speak only when their words add something meaningful. Over time, their lives become simpler, but far richer. There are fewer meaningless conversations, fewer emotional battles, fewer attempts to convince people who have already chosen misunderstanding. In their place comes something far more valuable: clarity. Clarity is one of the rarest forms of freedom because it removes the need to constantly question every decision. When your values are clear, saying no becomes easier. When your priorities are clear, distractions lose their power. When your identity is built from within, the opinions of strangers become background noise instead of life-defining events. That doesn't mean intelligent people stop caring. It means they begin caring wisely. They invest deeply in the people who show honesty, consistency, and mutual respect. They give generously where appreciation exists. They forgive, but they also remember. They remain kind without becoming naive. This balance is difficult because kindness without boundaries often becomes self-neglect, while boundaries without kindness become isolation. Real wisdom lives somewhere in between. Perhaps this is why the most emotionally mature people often have the smallest circles. Not because they cannot make friends. Because they understand that genuine connection cannot be rushed, forced, or measured by numbers. One authentic conversation can have more value than 100 shallow interactions. One trustworthy friend can provide more peace than an entire room full of people seeking attention. Quality quietly replaces quantity. Eventually, those around them begin noticing the difference. They seem calmer during conflict, less reactive under pressure, more confident without appearing arrogant. They no longer compete for validation because their confidence is no longer borrowed from other people's approval. It comes from keeping promises to themselves, from choosing integrity when shortcuts were available, from protecting their mental health without apologizing for it. Ironically, the people who once believed they had disappeared often discover something unexpected. They were never gone. They simply stopped living for an audience. They stopped performing versions of themselves designed to satisfy everyone else. They finally became authentic. And authenticity has a strange effect. It doesn't always attract more people. It attracts the right people. Relationships become deeper because they are built on truth instead of convenience. Conversations become more meaningful because neither person feels the need to pretend. Life becomes quieter, but that quiet is no longer empty. It is peaceful. If you've found yourself stepping away from certain relationships, spending more time reflecting, or choosing fewer but healthier connections, don't immediately assume something is wrong with you. Growth often looks unfamiliar. Change often feels lonely before it feels liberating. The path toward a more intentional life is rarely crowded because it requires courage. It requires letting go of approval, releasing unhealthy expectations, and accepting that not everyone will understand the person you're becoming. And that's okay. Not every chapter of your life is meant to include the same people. Some individuals are there to teach lessons. Some are there to walk beside you for years. A few will remain for a lifetime. Your responsibility is not to keep everyone. Your responsibility is to become someone you can respect when you're alone. Because at the end of the day, the relationship you cannot escape is the one you have with yourself. Protect it, nurture it, strengthen it. Everything else grows from there. So perhaps intelligent people don't disappear from the world at all. Perhaps they simply stop disappearing from themselves. And once that happens, every decision becomes clearer, every relationship becomes more intentional, and every new chapter begins with something far more powerful than confidence. It begins with peace. If this video helped you see yourself, or someone else, from a new perspective, take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs to hear this message. Every week, we explore the hidden psychology behind human behavior, emotional intelligence, and personal growth to help you live with greater clarity and purpose. Until next time, keep questioning your assumptions, keep protecting your peace, and never stop becoming the person you were meant to be.